Bonjour, mon ami. You're listening to the Sort Yourself Out podcast. And today we're discussing how to work off your karma. So make yourself comfortable because this is a deep one. I'm your host, Janine Hunt, natural health therapist for over 30 years, hypnotherapist, lifelong student, and spiritual seeker. I like to seek out the most effective practices and techniques that provide the greatest bang for my buck and the fastest route to freedom from whatever is holding us back. I can't wait to share with you these powerful techniques so that you too can sort yourself out, know deeper meaning in your life, and best of all, a sense of inner peace. So let's get started. Well, hello there, my friend. I deeply appreciate you joining me today for a discussion of one of my all-time favorite topics. We are talking about karma, and more specifically, how to work off your karma. I'll be providing you with a couple of powerful techniques that you can begin to put into practice starting today. And I've also got a special freebie for you that you can download to help you mitigate your karma. I'll put a link in the show notes and tell you about that a bit later. This episode is part 2 in my series on karma. So if you missed last week's episode, you might want to check that out before you listen to this one. So I just want to go over what I'm discussing in this 3-part series on karma. Part 1, last week's episode, is Karma 101. And here we looked at what karma is, how it operates in our lives, and we also addressed the big elephant in the room when it comes to karma. This episode, Part 2, is even more juicy because we'll be discussing how to work off your karma. We'll be getting into some deeper karmic principles so we can appreciate how we're generating our karma and delving into some qualities that we need to cultivate in order to work it off. And I'll be sharing a really quick and easy practice that has a big impact on reducing the karmic implications of all of the stuff that you get up to. In Part 3 in our karma series, we asked the question, if you believed in karma, how would you live your life? Because there really should be some conscious effort to modify and evolve the way you live if you believe that karma is a thing. So in Part 3, we'll be looking at the stuff we covered and learned in Parts 1 and 2, and we'll be giving it a more practical spin for both how we live our lives individually and as a society, as a whole. Well, I cannot wait to get stuck into this topic, so let's dive in right now. To begin, let's have a little look at what karma is. I covered this last week, but if you didn't catch that episode, here is a definition of karma from the Ageless Wisdom teachings. Karma is the law of cause and effect, or sowing and reaping. Karma means action and it's coming into effect. In the mental, emotional, and material worlds, no good deed can escape its reward, and no evil deed its fit penalty. By this law, our characters are the exact product of our past evolution. Therefore, the future is now in our own hands. Wow. So there's an interesting point here, that if you want to get off of the hamster wheel of reincarnation, you've also got to consider all that good karma you're sowing, because you'd need to hang around to reap the rewards. Not good if you want to achieve enlightenment and bugger off from life in the material world. Now, I called this episode How to Work Off Your Karma, as that is the way that most people relate to karma. But really, we're talking about how to balance your karma. Most people think that you have to create good karma, and this is true to an extent. However, according to the Ageless Wisdom, in order to experience liberation from the cycle of rebirth, Because the law of karma and the law of rebirth or reincarnation are inextricably linked, we need to achieve neutrality of karma. So we're no longer creating bad karma and no longer creating good karma either. So this may sound a little weird, like, what? Don't create good karma? Now, I'm going to read you a quote by the Tibetan, where he talks about how we achieve this neutrality of karma. It's a little dense with arcane terminology, so I'll break it down a bit afterwards. Just to clarify first, though, when the Tibetan says ego, he means the soul. This is not the ego of modern psychology. He calls the soul the ego with a capital E. Okay, here's the quote. The Tibetan said that when the will and purpose of the ego are realized by man in his waking consciousness in the physical brain, then the law of karma in the three worlds is becoming neutralized, and man is on the verge of liberation. He has exhausted the initial vibration, and there is no response within his sheaths to the threefold vibration of the three worlds. He stands freed from the three kingdoms and the fourth. Wow. So I'll admit this does sound a little arcane. So I'll break it down a bit here. When he speaks of the three worlds, he means the mental, emotional, and etheric/physical planes of consciousness that comprise our external world and also the field of human evolution. And similarly, when he speaks of the sheaths, he's referring to our physical, emotional, and mental bodies, the vehicles through which we experience life and express ourselves in the material world. When he says we stand freed from the three kingdoms and the fourth, he's talking about being liberated from the four kingdoms of nature, which comprise our life in the material world. That is the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom, which is the fourth. And guess what we're liberated to? Yeah, the fifth kingdom, known variously as the kingdom of souls, the kingdom of God, and the kingdom of heaven. This is the next level of evolution for humanity. Now, I hope I'm making this clear. I realize I've chosen a rather complex quotation here, but the upshot is this. We attain liberation and get off of the wheel of rebirth when we no longer have anything within us, physically, emotionally, or mentally, that responds to the call of material existence. We have balanced our karma. So look at it this way. You keep creating good karma. It's radiating out and affecting someone else or a community or even a nation. The closer to enlightenment you are, the more powerful you are, and the greater is your capacity to have a potent effect in the world. And karma is the law of cause and effect, right? So if you're busy causing effects in the world, at whatever level, you have to stick around to get the rebound effect of what you caused. And here, science agrees with spirituality. Hurrah! Though it probably wouldn't like to admit it, as it is a law of physics that for every action there is an equal reaction. This is the karmic effect of getting what's coming to you according to your own thoughts, words, and deeds. So even if you've got some nice stuff coming because you've caused some beautiful effects in the world, you remain bound to the wheel of existence in a physical body on Earth. Wild, eh? Who'd have thunk you'd ever want to not create good karma? So, how do you go about that? Well, I don't know. Don't look at me. Well, actually, I do have some pointers. There's a caveat, though, that these are based on my understanding and study of spiritual principles. Someone way further along the spiritual path than me could hear what I'm talking about and say, Janine, you're talking out your you-know-what. And you know what I mean there, right? Ass. Yep, sometimes I talk out my ass. I try not to, but the point is that, like you, I am just a student of spiritual principles too. I'm always trying to apply what I learn, and I hope that I'm getting it right. But I'm a student. And this is why I really value the Ageless Wisdom so much. At the beginning of all of the Tibetan's books with Alice Bailey, he asks us to keep an open mind about the teachings and to put them to the test in our daily lives so that we ascertain their truth and usefulness. No dogma, no BS, no blind faith required. Just a nice, mature, and respectful approach that puts the ball in our own court. We need to do the work ourselves and develop our own powers of discernment. The Ageless Wisdom teaches that karma and reincarnation are two of the main ideas which humanity, at this time in our evolution, really needs to grasp and understand, and then, most importantly, act like we understand it. We need to bring our actions in alignment with that understanding. At the end of part 1, I suggested that in order to comprehend karma and to take it beyond the elephant in the room I spoke about, and this is the gut emotional reaction that many people have to the concept of karma, that we need to view life from a much higher and broader perspective. We need to try to view existence from the standpoint of eternity. So to foster that expanded perspective, we need to cultivate a few spiritual qualities, otherwise known as detachment, dispassion, and discrimination. In Discipleship in the New Age by Alice Bailey and the Tibetan Master, the Tibetan tells a student that detachment is an outstanding requirement and a quality to be cultivated. This is not the detachment of self-protection or of self-immunization or of aloofness, but that soul detachment which works from soul levels, and seeing all life in the light which streams from the soul, regards everything from the standpoint of eternity. There's that phrase again. I just love that phrase. He goes on to say, you will then see the real values involved and the true perspectives of the picture. So now we're getting into the how to work off and balance our karma. So let's take a quick look at the 3 Ds: detachment, dispassion, and discrimination. I'm just going to cover these quickly as they're pretty big topics in their own right. But don't worry, as I'll be giving you some pointers on how you can start cultivating them right now in your own life. And great news, they will help you in all areas of your life, here and now, not just future incarnations, because these qualities will help you to eliminate pain and suffering, to relate to others in a much better manner, and to become the master of your mind. Nice. I love that last one particularly. It's such a powerful thing that has a huge impact in all areas of your life. Okay, first D, detachment, is defined as a state of impersonal observation where we learn to withdraw our interest and consciousness from the things of the senses and the calls of our lower nature, and more to assume the consciousness of the soul. In Glamour, a World Problem, the Tibetan said that one learns eventually to know himself to be above everything else whilst in incarnation, the director of forces. These he directs from the altitude of the divine observer and through the attainment of detachment. If you could but grasp the full significance of detachment and stand serene as the observing director, there would be no more waste motion, no more mistaken moves, and no more false interpretations, no wandering down the bypaths of daily life, no seeing others through distorted and prejudiced vision, and, above all, no misuse of force. Wow. So you can see how detachment can have a huge impact on karma. And FYI, Glamour in the Ageless Wisdom is not referring to our usual meaning of false eyelashes and beautiful nails, funnily enough, although I'll admit that that idea does tickle me a little. In the Ageless Wisdom, glamours are our delusions of an emotional nature that distort our perception of truth. Okay, on to our next one. Our next D is dispassion. And dispassion is all about our attitude toward life and all of the events and circumstances that we encounter and our ability to control our reactions to them. This allows us to stop being so identified with our emotional nature and begin to approach life from a higher mental aspect. We learn that we are not our emotions and thoughts, that we can step back and observe and thus control them. And when we do that, we can observe the glamours and illusions that are operating in us and consciously choose to free ourselves of them. D number 3 is discrimination, and this is all about what's known in the Ageless Wisdom as walking the narrow, razor-edged path between the pairs of opposites. Wow, that's a mouthful. But this is also the noble middle way of the Buddha. It means being able to distinguish between good and evil, between the self with a capital S and the not self, that's the little self, between matter and spirit, between the form side of life and the spiritual side of life. It's the faculty of weighing every circumstance, action, and occurrence in order to learn its purpose and underlying motive so that you can make the right choice of action. As you begin to practice discrimination, you learn that there are subtle distinctions of right and wrong. There are degrees of rightness. So you learn to discriminate between nuances of right and more right and high and higher. And these are refinements which shift and evolve with the evolution of your consciousness. This development is what enables you to look back at some decision you made or something you did in the past and say, "What the hell was I thinking?" So when you cultivate these 3 Ds, you naturally begin to purify your lower nature, meaning you're not so fixated on and interested in all the trappings and things of life. You become more attuned to your spiritual nature. You begin a reorientation to the spiritual reality, where you know that we are all one, and you begin to think and speak and behave in alignment with a much higher order of existence. And here is the value of the 3 phases of transformation that I teach and that I've talked about in a few of my earlier podcast episodes. Basically, in phase 1, we raise our awareness. So we learn the nature of our thoughts, what's going on betwixt our ears. In phase 2, we liberate ourselves of our glamours, and illusions, all those hindrances that block us from advancement and evolving. In phase 3, we reprogram our minds with ideas that serve us and that are in alignment with the spiritual reality. Okay, now I'm going to throw in a 4th D here because it wraps up the first 3 Ds nicely for our look at karma. And that D is for decentralization. When you develop detachment, dispassion, and discrimination, you achieve a level of decentralization where you rise above the personal, and your attachment only to other personalities such as family and friends. You learn to love impersonally and inclusively. You begin to think about and act for the welfare of the group, the other kingdoms in nature, the whole, not just the few in your immediate circle. It's all about inclusiveness. Now, these are things that take time to cultivate, but to start to bring them into your awareness, there is nothing better than a daily meditation practice. This will help on so many levels. You begin to learn all the thoughts and beliefs that are constantly passing through your mind, many of which you'll see you really don't want there because they're not nice and they're not true. These are the glamours and illusions we talked about earlier. When you meditate, you gain the ability to observe your mind, to learn that you are not your thoughts and emotions. You're not your mind. Meditation fosters the development of all 4 Ds. It fosters your connection to your soul and its wisdom and purpose and qualities so that you can bring these into expression in your daily life. And the more that you can anchor the love and wisdom of your soul in your physical plane existence, the more you will automatically be taking care of the 4 Ds and clearing your karmic connections and debts. Nice. Meditation is so important because it also develops the ability to abstract our thought and attention and focus from the outer world and withdraw our focus into the world of spirit, where karma can be balanced and ultimately brought to an end so that we can get off of the wheel of rebirth. Now, I'm not going in depth today to discuss meditation, but I did do that in an earlier podcast. I think it was episode 3. And if you want to start meditating and mitigating that negative karma, then check out my free quick start guide to doable meditation. The guide gives you really simple, no fuss instructions on how to meditate and also tips to make sure that you can fit it into your day and move past any resistance you might feel towards beginning a daily meditation practice like so many of us do. Okay, we're moving on now to the one thing that is going to help you the most to balance your karma. And that is, drumroll, the practice of harmlessness. Yes, harmlessness. Now here's a definition of harmlessness from the Ageless Wisdom. Harmlessness is an active, positive, dynamic quality, the will to bring good to others. It is achieved by watching every thought, word, and deed so that there is no possibility of injuring others. It means refusing to think ungenerously or to criticize. To be harmless means to have understanding and purity of motive. It makes for perfect relationships with others. Holy cow! So you can see how practicing the 4 Ds of detachment, dispassion, discrimination, and decentralization, and a daily meditation practice go hand in hand with the practice of harmlessness. Each one supports and fosters the other. And note as well that these are all practices. They need to be activated in your daily life. This is the dynamic, positive, and active quality in harmlessness. You can know all there is to know about spirituality and right living, but it is only when you make it a practical part of your daily living that it becomes wisdom. These things need to be put into practice in your life. Okay, so let's look at some ways that you can practice harmlessness. And then I'm going to give you a nice little practice you can do that will really help you to attain greater powers of detachment, dispassion, and discrimination and start turning around that karma. Now, these coming up are some instructions from the Tibetan on how to practice harmlessness. 1. Study your daily conduct and words so as to make them utterly harmless. Set yourself to think those thoughts about yourself and others which will be constructive and positive, and hence harmless in their effects. 2. Study your emotional effect on others so that by no mood, no depression, and no emotional reaction can you harm a fellow man. 3. Remember, in this connection, violent spiritual aspiration and enthusiasm, misplaced or misdirected, may quite easily harm a fellow man. So look not only at your wrong tendencies, but at the use of your virtues. So this is really interesting. In number 3, he's reminding us to be wise in what we communicate with others. Even if it's a good and positive thing in a general sense, we can do someone a disservice by forcing our ideas upon them, introducing them to things that they're just not ready for. So you wouldn't give a toddler a big knife and say, hey, it's going to be great, you can chop up the veggies for dinner. Similarly, you should not expose people to information or ideas that it is just not their time to learn. So there are karmic implications for this. So here you get to exercise your powers of discrimination. All right, moving on. Here's that little practice I spoke of earlier. It's called the evening review. It's really simple and only takes a few minutes. What you do is this. Every night before you go to sleep, you spend 5 minutes or so casting your mind back over your day, from the most recent to when you got up in the morning. You look at your actions, your conversations, your ways of relating to people, your reactions to others, your thoughts. You look at all these and you recognize what was good about all of those things, as well as the not so good. Now, let's be clear. This is important. The purpose here is by no means to beat yourself up when you find stuff that you're not so proud of. Your purpose is to recognize and observe. And believe me, the next time you're about to act in a way that you didn't like in a previous evening review, it will pop into your consciousness and you will be able to act more wisely and lovingly this time around. And that is good for your karma, and also for every single person that you come into contact with. So this is a deceptively simple and powerful little practice. It is a top-down technique where you're using a higher part of yourself, your mind, your conscience, your inner knowing, to manage the lower parts, that part of you that reacts with an automatic, snarky, and potentially hurtful response, that doesn't think before she speaks, that part that takes offense so easily and then descends into anger or depression or self-recrimination. So, with this top-down approach of the evening review, you are actually raising your consciousness. You are evolving yourself. And that kind of awareness will create an exponential shift whose effects will ripple out to uplift all areas of your life, as well as the lives of the people you come into contact with. That is the power of a top-down technique. And it also creates a little slice of magic in your life too, by helping you to attain what is known in the Ageless Wisdom as the attitude of the observer. And how does it do that? Well, in lots of ways, but I'm going to give you a few now. 1, it takes you out of autopilot, revealing to you in the moment your knee-jerk, programmed, automatic reactions to triggers or people or circumstances that press your buttons. When you're aware, you can consciously choose your words and actions and thereby create better results. Good for karma. Tick. 2, you can recognize the negative beliefs and thought patterns, those glamours and illusions we spoke about, that are not helpful to you. Another big tick for karma. 3, it makes you more aware of cause and effect, shining light on how you are bringing about the situations and circumstances of your life, both positive and negative. A huge tick for karma. 4, it helps you to understand your motivations and how they are edifying or maybe not so much. Another massive tick for karma. 5, It helps you to cultivate mindfulness in daily life. This is a biggie with far-reaching benefits, as your attention is focused on what is occurring in the present moment. So you can apply yourself to the needs of the moment and not be wrapped up in your own misery, regretting the past, or fearing the future. Another big tick for karma. And now, my friend, comes the daddy, the whopper. When you can observe your thoughts, you realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, the presence observing your thoughts. And that gives you some distance and space. And holy cow, here comes the first D, some detachment from them. You can look at a thought and go, that sounds like my mother. That's not even mine. Or, there's a voice in my head saying all manner of nasty shit to me. I call that my inner bitch. And then you can choose not to pay attention to it, not to believe it anymore. Nice. This attitude of the observer is your point of power, where you begin to master your mind. And guess what? Mastering your mind is not only the way to balance your karma, it is also the path to inner peace. Woohoo! Okay, my friend, I'm going to wrap this up now with a quick recap. So, in order to wrap our heads around karma, we need to look at it from an expanded viewpoint, from the standpoint of eternity. We need to develop the 3 Ds, detachment, dispassion, and discrimination, via meditation, the evening review, and the practice of harmlessness, all of which help us to work off our karma. As we become more decentralized, there's the 4th D, more inclusive, and more enlightened people who serve not the separate, selfish little self, but who serves the good of the whole damn thing. Yeah, baby. Now, if you're interested in learning more deeply about all of these fascinating and life-enhancing topics, I have some really exciting news to share on how you can amplify your own well-being as well as your positive impact in the world. Because in a couple of months, I will be opening the doors to my new membership experience called the Inner Circle. In this monthly membership, I'll be offering my most powerful top-down techniques to sort yourself out, to free yourself of your hang-ups and blockages, to take charge of your mind, and to nourish your soul. There'll be mini courses, hypnosis sessions, guided meditations, tapping videos, neurolinguistic programming techniques, mindfulness training, the Ageless Wisdom teachings, and more, so that wherever you are on your path to greater well-being, you can just start where you are and then take the next step. You'll have the tools, practices, and techniques you need to not just heal your life, but to make it more meaningful, fulfilling, peaceful, and beautiful. So, if you're ready to transform your well-being and would like to be kept informed, go on over to theinspirationcloud.com/membership to get on the wait list, and I'll keep you updated. I'll also put a link to this in the show notes. And also, don't forget to download your free quick start guide to doable meditation. Like I said, the guide gives you really simple, no-fuss instructions on how to meditate. And I'm talking here a form of meditation that only takes 5 minutes. It's just 5 minutes, so no excuses. We can all find 5 minutes. And it also includes tips to make sure that you can fit it into your day and to move past any resistance you might feel about starting a meditation practice. So give it a go. 5 measly little minutes for a huge impact on all areas of your life. And if you want to work off your karma, meditation is your best friend. You got to do it. Just do it. So I'm going to finish up now. I really hope you found this episode about how to work off your karma interesting and informative. I'll be back next week with part 3 in this series on karma, asking the question, if you believed in karma, how would you live your life? We'll be looking at stuff we learned in parts 1 and 2 and getting into the nitty-gritty of it, giving it a more practical spin, both for how we live our lives individually and collectively as a society, as humanity. So I really hope you'll join me then, and thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you choosing to spend your time with me. So have a good week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. I really hope you found it helpful and full of uplifting ideas that you can put into practice in your life. And if you have, chances are your friends and family will too. So please share it with them on social media. You'll be helping them to sort themselves out, because I bet you think they need it, right? But seriously, you'll also be doing me a huge favor, and I will be eternally grateful for your generosity. It would also be lovely if you would leave me a review on iTunes, preferably a nice one, please. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast while you're there. If you have any questions or would like me to address a certain topic, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at info@theinspirationcloud.com. Have a good one, folks. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.